Hello and welcome into the Sporting JAX Report. I'm Cole Pepper. We'll be joined by Mauricio Ruiz in just a moment. First, want to remind you to become a member of Sporting JAX. Just go to sportingjax.com. There are a lot of great advantages, not the least of which being that you get discounts on Sporting JAX official club merchandise, invitations to attend exclusive insider events, automatic entry into competitions for a chance to win special prizes and experiences, and you get the monthly Sporting JAX email newsletter. Plus, if you place a deposit on season tickets and receive your first access to seats, and you'll have the special limited edition Sporting JAX founding member pin coming your way. It's absolutely free to join. To be a member, just go to sportingjax.com. All right, now let's bring in Mauricio Ruiz, who comes to us from the Northeast. Looking good up there, Mauricio. Where are you and why are you there?
So I am beautiful Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where it is cold as 15 degrees outside. But it's a beautiful landscape. I've never been here before, so I'm learning about this area of the country quite well. But ultimately, I'm here, Coach, just to learn. This is a wonderful setting of a social gathering of people that are working in professional youth international football. So it's a summit. It's called a club to club summit, where clubs from all over the country. There's been 35 different countries invited. 35 different states within our country that have been invited here, about 150, 170 people, about 70 different clubs, and they operate anywhere from the youth level all the way to the professional level and anything in between. So it's a lot of good interaction with people that are doing this really, really well. And as we build up to build our professional team, men's and women's, by 2025, 2026, we're taking this time to participate in a lot of these conversations. Dealing with a lot of different people, from statistics to data analytics to agents, and just learning from other clubs, including USL clubs such as Rhode Island, that are really paving a pathway for us and other expansion clubs coming up in the next couple of years.
Anything surprising or notable that really is a big takeaway for you?
Yeah, it's just so much information is shared. I think, I was just talking to someone here after a session we just had with an agency, a player agency. They were just really transparent about the process. I think a lot of times, we feel like we have this intelligence, so we know better. And we hoard that, or we don't really share that. I think when you come to environments like this, we have a lot of high performers, people that have been doing this in the business. It's several different arts of the business, right? It's not just, soccer is just, we think about soccer on the field, but there's so many different components, from marketing, financing, agency, player recruitment, and you have experts in all of those parts. So when you speak to those experts, the transparency of it, the willingness to share best practices, I think we still see a growth in the game of soccer and here in the US. And I think the people that are in it at a high level, they're encouraged to see clubs like Sporting JAX coming into the equation, and they want us to do well, right? The only time they don't want us to do well is when we compete against them for 90 minutes. Outside of those 90 minutes, they want us to do extremely well. So just the sharing of information is something that has been extremely valuable. Surprising to a certain extent, but really encouraging that people are willing to share best practices.
All right, let's transition here, Mauricio, to talk about some USL preseason action, including Orange County SC, a 2-1 winner over Loyola Marymount, taking on a college team. You've been on the other side of this as a college coach in past years. From a pro perspective, if you're a USL Championship side, what are you looking for in a preseason matchup against a college team?
So the college teams provide a different type of challenge. When you're in preseason with other pro teams that are in the same timing of preseason, everybody knows that those games typically go about at 50 to 70% speed, because the teams, they understand where they are. They're not trying to really beat up on each other. They're practicing and then implementing their game model, their principles, integrating new players into the squad. So pro to pro preseason games, they're useful, they're purposeful, and obviously the level is better. But the interesting concept of the college component, the college players are trying to showcase themselves. So they're not going at a 50 to 70%. They're going at 100%. Yeah, the quality is lower, but the game certainly brings a certain level of intensity that the pro teams actually sometimes find it challenging, and they get a little shocked that, just 18 to 22-year-old college kids are coming at them so hard. You do have to manage expectations, and you do have to manage your roster, that sometimes it is an opportunity to be seen, but sometimes it is just an opportunity to participate in a preseason and build a good relationship. But as a college program, you take that as an opportunity really seriously, because it's early in your preseason period too. The kids just got back to college, But on the pro side, you better be careful because they will advertise. There's a close game, Orange County 2-1 against Loyola Marymount, and ultimately the level of the pro players, 9 out of 10 times, will overcome the intensity of the college level players. But it's not an easy game by any means because the pro players are still in that preseason mode of increasing their load a little bit at a time, where the college kids really want to showcase their talent because potentially by this time next year, some of them will be trying out and they could get invites from some of these friendly games.
All right, remember the USL Championship season kicks off March the 9th. We'll be keeping a close eye on how all the teams prepare over the next month or so. Remember to get the very latest from what's happening with Sporting Jacks with the Sporting Pod, our new podcast featuring Mauricio, Tony Allegretti, and I. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Our most recent episode talking about how to start working in pro sports. If you're a college student or looking to change your career, might be an interesting episode for you to check out. The Sporting Pod, absolutely free. All right, Mauricio, the World Cup sites were assigned in terms of which matches and when they will play. We already knew what cities were going to be hosting. 11 venues in the United States, 2 in Canada, 3 in Mexico. The ones that stood out to me, the U.S. will open play at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, so a West Coast start. Miami will host the third place game, and Atlanta gets the semifinals. Finals will be at the Meadowlands in New Jersey. Anything really stand out to you as far as these schedules and sort of the placements of these games, something that maybe you wouldn't necessarily notice at first blush?
Well, first, I mean, I think the fact that the final 3 games, the most important is, third place game, the semifinal game, and the final are all East Coast games, right? I think that mirrors a lot of the appetite for the European and the Asian market as far as time change. Make sure that those games are in a time zone that you can still watch, and it's not in the middle of the night. I think some of those really high consuming soccer countries and continents, as I mentioned, over in Asia and Europe. So the fact that the semis and the final are on the East Coast, I think it makes sense. But I think you could argue the other way as well, that maybe the West Coast is not getting as many of those impactful games outside of obviously the open play at SoFi. A little surprised with the Meadowlands. I figured maybe the final would have been in Miami. It's a more vibrant city, kind of more of an atmosphere. But certainly, the New York, New Jersey area, they're not going to fall short of putting together a good product and the interaction. But if you've been to the Meadowlands, it is a bit of a ways away. It's not centered in New York, where the Miami a little bit more for the highway. So I think there's pros and cons. I don't think it's the way to kind of get it perfect. But Atlanta is a venue that maybe I would expect it just because it's an enclosed venue. And they can control the weather and the temperature a little bit better. So big games, indoor stadium, tend to make sense. They obviously have to convert it to grass, Meadowlands as well. And I think they'll do a lot of that going forward.
That's going to be something to watch. Of course, we'll be talking about the U.S. and getting ramped up. They'll be in the World Cup as a host country, but want to see how they prepare as that competition nears in 2026. All right, let's talk about some high school soccer here, Mauricio. There are a number of teams that have earned spots in the regionals, about 37 local schools making it as far as the regionals. Some of those regional play has already gotten underway as we tape here on a Monday. Some of those games are coming up quickly. Next week, some of the big classifications start regional play, including Bartram Trail, Atlantic Coast, Creekside, Ponte Vedra, Clay, Orange Park, and Beachside, and Nice on the girls' side. For the boys, Mandarin, Creekside, Nice, Fleming Island, Clay, Beachside, Inglewood, Stanton, and Yulee all play on the boys' side in those 5, 6, and 7A classifications. Of those teams that will begin regional play next week, who among them have the best chance of bringing home some hardware as state champions?
Well, Cole, that's a healthy selection of teams that are representing our area. And you mentioned the ones that are representing the 5, 6, and 7A. And I think we're going to have some state championships being celebrated here in the North, in the North Florida area, by all the way from Class A all the way to 7A, because there's just a wealth of talent and competitive football being played at the high school level. If you look at the girls' side, you just look at the top achievers there throughout the whole year. Look at Ponte Vedra. I believe they're ranked number 1 in the country right now, certainly number 1 in the state of Florida, but not to fall short of Bartram and Creekside. That's just at the top level. And you still have St. John's Country Day, as you said, will be playing by the time this is recorded. St. John's Country Day, a smaller school, but probably as competitive, as some of these top 5, 6, 8 schools. So, you put your money on Ponte Vedra, but football is an interesting game. Anything can happen. So I think we're pretty healthy, in this environment. And on the boys' side, not to take a backseat to the girls by any means. Certainly, we've been known on the girls' side as a more predominant high school environment. But on the boys' side, this year, Mandarin and Creekside have been really, really strong. Mandarin is probably the most consistent team, and you put your money on them making a deep, deep run. But Creekside have some talented players, and they got some really explosive targets that that could work when you're going into a deep run and a one-off, win or die. I think Creekside could surprise some folks going into the playoffs when you go against some of the lower, some of the teams in South Florida and Central Florida. So I would expect Mandarin and Creekside to make a deep run into the playoffs and represent our region really well in those kind of higher class rankings.
All right, we'll be keeping a close eye on the high school play for sure as the state playoffs continue. Mauricio, thanks so much. Safe travels back home. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys. All the best.
All right, that's Mauricio Ruiz in the Northeast. I'm Cole Pepper here in Jacksonville. Thanks for watching the Sporting JAX Report. We'll talk to you next time.